Honours because Richard's on holiday. So very happy to step into the breach and pick things up. You'll probably tell by my voice that I'm fighting a little bit of a cold. So I'm a little bit under the weather, but I'm hoping that the next 45 minutes to an hour is just going to cheer me up a little bit and make me feel a little bit better about how the day's going because I'm drugged up, but I'm surviving. So there we are. Sarah, if you could press the record button, I think that's all started. That's great. So as I said, a warm welcome from me. Very excited to see some of the presentations that we've got today. And we've got our usual meeting etiquette. So if you could follow those rules, that's great. I'm very keen to hear questions as we go through as well. So when presentations finish, if there's anything you want to ask, please put your hand up or put something in the chat as well. That would be fabulous. So, Brian, if we could just work through the opening slides. So, quick reminder on the people first improvement practice, always very good for us to frame how we go about doing improvement practice within the trust. So, we've got our three core principles around respect for staff, thinking about the patient, so the value to the person we care for, and the teams that do the work, know what the issues are, and are able to drive their improvements. So, if we just move forward. And then this is also the reminder of our 5 pillars. So what we try and implement with teams as part of the people first management system. So clear purpose, scientific learning through PDSA, production routines or daily planned control around how we're doing, discussion within the team as improvement huddle, and a check-in as to how we're all doing and hold each other accountable for the various team health values. So on to the next slide again, please. So delighted that we've got 4 people presenting today. And I think the first person we've got is Denise, just talking about work that she's been doing around eye care. Denise, we've not met, but I'm delighted that you're on the call today. So if you just want to pop your camera on and we'll just put on to the next slide and then it's all over to you. So the floor's yours.
Okay, thank you. It's nice to see everybody. So this work that we've done is around a piece of equipment that we use daily within the unit. So this is a piece of equipment that's used for every appointment basically. And what has happened is it's, as you can see, it's a portable piece of equipment. It often goes missing, gets broken, and then we end up spending most time looking for the piece of equipment. So in the department we have a book that we've started so that we can make sure that the batteries are working and what's happening on a daily basis. Do we move on? So this is the book that we've designed. So all of the eye cares that we've actually got in the department are all listed. When they're sent back to MEMS is listed, the date they go back, so that we can then chase them up because we didn't have any of this in place beforehand. And then weekly, there's a weekly check to check the batteries to make sure they're working. And then any issues are raised to myself and the other senior sister in the department, which seems to be working fairly well at the moment and is reducing the amount of time that we're spending looking for equipment. And I think that's it from me. Oh, standard of
You've got one more slide.
Oh, I've got one more slide. I missed that one. So yeah, that's basically everything that I've said. So the rota is created for the band 4s to do on a Friday. We found that what was happening was the equipment was being sent back to MEMS and it turned out that it just needed batteries. So I've put in place a checking system where the band 4s check the batteries on a Friday, make sure that they're all working, and if it says that it's not working, then we change them, and if it does need to go back to MEMS, it's sent to MEMS at that point. And it normally comes through either myself or Sue. So we've got more control over where they are in the system because we were just chasing our tails basically. Nobody knew where they were, who had them, how many we had. It came as quite a shock to me how many we did actually have, but most of them are at MEMS or at the manufacturers for repair. So it's stopped us chasing around and looking for equipment at the start of clinics, and it's made clinic flow a lot quicker.
Cool. And what? No, thank you. And what sort of impacts had from a patient perspective? Presumably a kind of reduction in delays because you've been able to find the kit.
Yeah, so it makes the patient journey a lot easier, that the member of staff hasn't had to go in 7 different rooms looking for a piece of equipment just to do a 2-second test on them. So it makes the patient experience a lot better.
Yeah, thank you. It's a really good improvement that you've implemented there, and as we quite often say, particularly when we're doing the training, it's around just coming up with good systems and standard work. So you're just reducing the time that you're needing to take to find things, and then because I'm sure you and your colleagues aren't short of things to do. So the fact that it all kind of works more smoothly because you can find the kits, obviously meaning that people are having a much kind of better day in clinic. So really kind of good initiative here. Very much appreciate the update. Any questions from the group, or any comments from anyone? So I think Vicky's just put something in the chat around great use of standard work to reduce the risk of delays when treating patients. So a big well done from there. Thanks, Denise. I know you guys are really busy in the REI, so very much appreciate you getting on the onto report out today. So thanks very much.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next contributor, and I think Kerry, it's you talking about your CATA project.
Hi everyone. Yeah, my name is Kerry and I'm the lead pharmacy technician for Medicines Optimization Clinical Commissioning. So my project had 2 areas being looked at. So the first one was we wanted to decrease the financial risk of NHS England challenges, and the second one was the amount of blue tech follow-ups we were having outstanding and reducing the volume of those. So a little bit of background as to what that means. An NHS England challenge is whereby we send data, financial data to NHS England, and if funding isn't in place or there's a commissioning query around the supply, they'll hold the money back and we won't get paid. We get that through as data to investigate. And at the end of the financial year 2022-2023, we had £300,000 worth of challenges where we were unable to resolve and receive that payment. So we wanted to do some work on being able to get that in a better position for future years. And then the other side of it was that we had a large number of the blue tech follow-ups not being completed. So that's again financial funding. So if that's not in place, we don't get the money back from NHS England and it becomes a challenge. So for both, we wanted to decrease the value and volume of those. So what we did, what I did was have a CATA project so that I could do it in steps. And the aim was in the first 6 months to reduce the follow-up volume by 50% and to reduce the NHS England challenges to less than £200,000. Then in the next 3 months was to reduce so that the overall volume was down by 75% and that the NHS England challenges were down to less than £175,000. And by the end of the year, we wanted to have the follow-up volume reduced by 85% and less than £150,000 in NHS England challenges. So the methods used to do that were, so for the follow-ups, we did a data cleanse on all the follow-ups outstanding, and we're able to see that actually a lot of the reasons they hadn't been done was due to lack of knowledge of the system and that actually patients were no longer on treatment. So we cleared them all off to see the true ones outstanding and then worked on clearing those. And we created crib sheets for the clinical teams so that they could understand the system better going forward. We were able to quite quickly find that the level of follow-ups was then at a much more reasonable level and closed that section of the project. Then with the NHS England challenges, we used a Pareto graph to put them in the highest value down to the lowest value so that we knew where to start investigating. We started looking into what the underlying cause was of the challenge so that we could put preventative actions in place. We engaged with the specialist pharmacist in appropriate areas, clinical teams and aseptic services to support that work. Across about 10 PDSA cycles, we were able to identify themes and trends and then put as many preventative actions in place as we could. Next slide, please. So the results were, as I mentioned before, the follow-ups by September 2023, they'd reduced to a significantly lower level, and we were aiming to have no more than 30 within a month, and that was being quite routinely kept to. And if it does go over, we work with the clinical team to bring it back down. And in terms of the NHS England challenges, so we, within the first 6 months of the project, we did a lot of work with the preventative actions, and then from October 2023 we really saw the benefit from all those actions, and we were able to achieve our 12-month target at that point much sooner than we'd anticipated. So we resolved £2.4 million worth of challenges. Apologies. We had £2.4 million worth of challenges within that financial year, so 2023 to 2024, and at the end of the financial year we had £51,000 unresolved, which was a significant improvement on the financial year previous. So initially we didn't see a decrease in the volume of challenges, but having put in robust processes, educated teams around us that were involved, and improving our data quality, we were able to resolve them much more quickly. But we also have now found in this financial year that all that work is now paying off and the volume has gone down. We also introduced a non-engagement process, so whereby if people aren't helping us resolve the challenges and we're struggling to get the financial risk resolved, we can now escalate appropriately. This has given us more staff time freed up because the amount coming in is lower and the processes are more efficient. So we're able to put that time into other elements of the job. So for example, our current next steps are working on price validations from NHS England and the CDF. So similar, but more to do with pricing rather than commissioning. Next slide, please. So overall, the learning from this project was that in the beginning, we had really high volume and value of NHS England challenges. So by using the kata methodology, we had smaller targets to work towards, which helped the work not become overwhelming. And it also meant that because we didn't know what was causing the challenges, we were able to experiment on resolutions before moving on to the next target condition, really cementing in our processes. And it was really, really valuable having coaching cycles, because then we could reflect on where we were and what we were achieving and making sure that we stayed on course. Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, Kerry. So fabulous work. Really impressed with this, and you've clearly made a massive difference. I must admit, when I saw the opening slides around your scale of ambition, I was thinking that's very keen, and you've clearly met that. So really well done. And there was before I kind of open it up to others, a couple of things that particularly jumped out to me. I liked your reference around the kind of Pareto, which is one of our kind of QI approaches around seeing where you're going to get best bang for buck, essentially. So great that you were doing that, and also that, you know, with what you've done, you've resolved it, so it's not, you haven't blitzed the backlog and then it's built up again. You put things in place to keep it at the right level, so that's so you know, that's all really important as well. You have talked a little bit about it already, but I just wouldn't mind just inquiring a little bit around what CUT has given you for kind of approaching this particular challenge. So maybe how you've approached this differently by using Kata than if you hadn't used Kata, as an example.
I think sort of your natural reaction to a problem is to try and solve everything at once, and then almost it becomes overwhelming, so you don't quite get where you want to go, or it takes too long. Whereas I found it really effective to be able to go, actually, I don't need to solve all of this problem right now, but I need to solve a small chunk. So that's where the Pareto helped. So like, let's take these two ones that have got the highest value, because actually that first target condition will hopefully be met by investigating those. So that's, I think, where it was most helpful to make it more manageable.
Yeah, absolutely. And plenty of other people have kind of said that as they've kind of gone through the kata journey around kind of breaking it down into that bite-sized chunks. And I really liked earlier on your reference to giving you the ability to have a bit of an open mind and experiment. And I think kata kind of provides that as well. So you're
Yeah,
not necessarily just defaulting to the classic solutions. You're just really trying to understand what the problem is.
yeah.
So yeah, really well done. And I think we're
Thank you.
awarding you a blue belt off the back of this. That's my understanding. Fabulous.
Yes.
That it's almost as if
Thank
it's
you.
choreographed. So that's great. I just wanted to read out a couple of comments from the chat, which you may or may not have seen. So Vicky just mentioning about a great use of standard work to reduce the risk of delays when treating patients, and a great challenge to set yourself. And a lovely comment there from Kerry Killeen. So Kerry's been great to coach, really methodical in approach and ambitious in setting challenges. So
Thank you.
really impressed, really proud of your success. So very well done. And very appreciative of Kerry Killeen's efforts as your kata coach as well. So that's all fabulous. So thank you. So we'll move on to our third contributor, and I'm pleased to see that Sarah's on the call. Nice to see you, Sarah. Appreciate you jumping on as well and telling us what you've been doing for your kind of practice coach project. So the floor is yours. Over to you.
Thanks, Neil. And like you, I'm not feeling too good today as well. So sorry for the appearance, but feeling a bit rough today. So my project is, it seems quite simple, but it's actually not, and it's made a huge difference. So I wanted to talk everyone through it so that I could try and share that learning. So what we looked at was the time spent addressing roster and emails. Can we go on to the next slide, please? Okay, I feel like I should be stood on the telly somewhere saying next slide like they did in COVID. So the goal for this was to reduce the amount of time it takes for the rota coordinators to respond to the emails received from the resident doctors. I'm not sure if everybody's aware, but at the moment there's been a new diktat that we've got the junior doctors are no longer junior doctors, they're resident doctors, in case anyone's not quite sure. The reason for this is in the good rostering guide, it states that we should be responding to the resident doctor emails within 5 working days. We weren't achieving that, unfortunately, due to lots of many issues, but we felt we had lots of other issues that were stopping us from doing that, but we just couldn't nail what it was. So I used the 8-step approach to try and sort this out and get to the bottom of it. So the first time I used the 8-step approach, I was a bit coy on it, but actually I've used it and I can't tell you how much I use it all the time now. So I'm sure other people would be pleased to hear that when, especially for Richard, who's not here today, unfortunately, who's my coach. But yeah, if we can go to the next slide, please. So we looked at what does the data show us? So, that's not come up properly. There's a pie chart there normally. But basically that pie chart showed us how many doctors we've got in medicine. So we currently work with 305 resident doctors who, as you can imagine, all want annual leave, all want to swap their shifts, and all want lots of different asks for us to manage their daily lives. But what we did discover is across those emails, there were 27 waiting to be actioned less than 7 days and 122 emails over 7 days, the longest being 7 weeks. Looking at that data, because obviously the plan was 5, but we've set ourselves the goal of coming down to less than 7 days. First, because we can't do it all. Rome wasn't built in a day, so we're doing it slowly as we go. But we discovered that we were also using 8 to 28 different categories across each of the inboxes. So it was really tricky when we were covering each other to know where on earth to go. Next slide, please. So we sat down as a team and I got the team together. At the end of the day, they're the ones that are my key stakeholders. They're in there doing the job. So I got them in and said, what is it? What do we think is going wrong? So they gave me a few comments back around a struggle to cover my colleagues as they don't manage the inbox like I do. So around the categories and things. There's so many emails, I don't know where to start. I don't know what's been actioned and what hasn't. So we had those discussions. So then we decided to, on the next slide, please, hold a process mapping session. Richard's told me off for this, by the way, because it's not very pretty, my process map, but we got the end results that we wanted. It still did the same thing. But yeah, we held that process mapping. And again, it was down to the team. I sat with them and we went through a few bits. There were a couple that weren't involved in it at the beginning, but during my absence, they then went and carried on for me as a team just to add in some extra pieces. But what we did realise is the key areas causing variation with the rota coordinator's organisation of each inbox, the discrepancy in how each of the processes are managed, and the response times from the managers and residents. So that's not a criticism, that's just around if we're having to stick to a certain length of time, it would be good to have that come back the other way, because actually what's delaying us is once we've asked a question, we're waiting a couple of weeks to get responses sometimes. Everybody's busy and we understand that. Next slide, please. So what we want to do, so we sat down and we looked at different ways we could change how it looks and how it feels. So the first part was I spoke to Marie Collicott, who was incredibly helpful at the Quality Academy, who told me about the use of electronic inbox. I'm not very au fait with the electrical side of things. So Marie taught me how to do the, you set up a rule and it sends your emails into a certain subfolder. We get a lot of emails that we don't necessarily need to see every day, but once a week we can go in and just check that we may not be involved in it right at the beginning, but it might come later. So the postgrad and the induction emails were then going to sit in that inbox to just look at once a week. They weren't urgent, they didn't need looking at every day. We then wanted to set up absence and await and reply subfolders, because they're the ones where we've done the work, where we're just waiting for that response from someone else. So again, every day they're going to review that, come back to it and respond once they've got the response from someone else. But it means they're not sat or chalking up that inbox, making you feel really terrible. The categories. So to enable us all to be able to work across all of the inboxes appropriately, we wanted to standardize how they were managed. So we looked at reducing the amount of categories. I mean, one had 28, it was ridiculous. And it was silly little things like Sarah Joint's emails. And it was like, oh no. So we thought that's not needed. Let's pull it all down. We can manage it better. And we listed a few that we wanted to use. We needed to communicate that and discuss it with the rota coordinators before we put it in place to make sure they all agreed that. And then the last part that we really wanted to concentrate on was around communication with our resident doctors about how they request leave. Currently, we're using a spreadsheet and we're using health roster. Going forward, it will all be on health roster. When you'll probably all know this, but when you request leave on health roster, it auto generates an email to your manager to state that you've requested leave. You can imagine with 305 doctors, we get a lot of that. So we have now looked at whether we can remove that function and ask the juniors to stop emailing us, because also they're emailing us on top of the auto-generated emails. Stop that and see if it's possible to remove it and use a report on medics rostering. Next slide, please. So how did it go? The exciting bit. So we reduced the number of categories. So unfortunately, my wording's not come out very well there, but the first block on the left there on the variance of categorization, that went from something like 28 down to 8 was the most. And the reason that we've got some more than others is because within medicine, we categorize what specialty it is, so that if you're looking at the emails and you're not managing that service at that point, you know which service line that doctor sits under. So some areas have more than others, so we're still going to be a slight variation. We also did introduce the electronic inbox and the subfolders, which are being managed really well every day. Once we did this, we then looked again. I took a snapshot of the data, and it was on a Friday, which is normally the day when we get the most emails, because junior doctors have time in the afternoon to be able to send lots of leave emails on a Friday. I think they've had enough for the week. And we discovered the difference. So the first two lots of those graphs on the left-hand side of that bottom graph is showing what we had before. So it's less than 7 days before and less than 7 days after we've taken out these actions. And then it's more than 7 days and less than 7 days. And you can just see a tiny little bit coming up from that greater than 7 days, which is quite frustrating, but it was because we had annual leave and then we had crisis leave on that day. And unfortunately, we couldn't completely cover that inbox, but that would have been at 0. So I'm happy to say we did achieve that in the end. So yes, so if we can go on to the next step, please, onto the next slide. So monitoring and feedback. So as part of the, we want to make sure this carries on. We want consistency, we want standardisation, and we want it to continue the way it is so that we help the juniors lead their best life with work and home balance. And we know that's been a problem. So as part of the one-to-ones, my support manager will be meeting with the rota coordinators weekly. And part of one of the KPIs will be this project around how many have you got? Is it more than 7 days? And what can we do to support that? Has there been a reason for it? I've already gone out to the resident doctors to say, can you let us know what you think, and are we doing better? And is there anything we can do to improve that? So we want good and bad, because everything can be resolved. We're also going to run an audit on a monthly basis, where we then discuss it as a team in our monthly team meeting. And I've forgotten to put it on there, but we're actually going to do the employee of the month as well, on how we are looking and the progress that they've provided. We've done that already with one of our rota coordinators, who actually has no idea with what IT happens, and she's completely wiped the floor with it, and it's been brilliant, and we're really proud of her. And then I'm going to be presenting it at the Medicine Improvement Wall to ensure that everyone can learn from what we've learnt. I've just popped in some messages there from my team about how they feel it's improved, which are really, really positive. So yes, that's where we're at. Is there any questions?
So I think, Brian, if we just go on to the next slide.
Oh, is there another one? Did I have another?
There is. This is my formal bit, Sarah, which is just to congratulate you on achieving your practice coach training and delivering the 10% improvement. So really well done, and a really good project. And I must admit, I was quite taken aback when I realised how many resident doctors you were looking after. So 305, that's an impressive number.
That's a lot.
And instantly then you can get a real feel for the kind of the scale and kind of challenge of kind of picking all of that up. There was a few things that kind of jumped out to me that I thought was just kind of worth emphasizing. I liked your use of some of the technology, the standard work, how you were going to organize everything, and also particularly organizing the inboxes and almost having your organizational kind of system for that, because it's interesting. I regularly deliver the leadership fundamentals training. We talk about success, and generally people think about it how the office is laid out or how we're laying out like a clinic room. But actually how we organize things electronically in terms of a folder structure or mail structures are really important as well. And there's a real kind of application there. So it's great to see you've kind of adopted all of that. You hinted earlier on that you were struggling a little bit with the 8-step to start with, but it sounds like you're converted now. So what's the kind of 8-step giving you? What's the journey you've gone through in terms of your learning, please?
So I'm not sure if Paul's on here today, because Paul started as my initial tutor, and it's
yes, he is on.
Hi, Paul. It's taken me nearly 2 years to get to this stage. It was purely time for me and the role I was in. So obviously having to deal with the amount of strikes we had, my daily working and how I was planning things just went out the window quite a lot. And I felt I just didn't have the time to dedicate to it. But also the projects I was looking at were too big. So I was trying to change the world, and it just wasn't. It's a bit like, sorry, I've forgotten the lady's name from the last one, about looking at the Pareto.
Kerry, yeah.
Kerry, yeah, looking at the Pareto. And this was part of one of those areas that was a problem that would help resolve a lot more things. But it was about knowing what to concentrate on first. And yeah, I have converted, because actually I've just taken on a support manager who's made my life a lot easier. Hence getting to the end of this as well. And I'm actually putting him on the course to try and get him trained up, but I'm going to be coaching him too in the background, because I just feel, if you've got the time and you're able to get on with it, it's a really, really useful tool. It makes you think about things differently. Richard said to me, my problem is I do it and it's all done, but I do it like, there's the problem, I'm going to do it now. I don't think about it methodically, and having thought about it methodically made it so much easier to manage.
Yeah, excellent. Some really good reflections and observations there. And I guess with the scale of this, it's really easy to just kind of get a little bit over ambitious and feel that you want to solve everything. So I'm
Yeah.
glad the tools and the processes have been useful for you. And I almost feel like you need an additional award just for kind of getting through to the end 2 years later. But I mean, and you know, Rome wasn't built in a day, but you've got there in the end. So that's
I
so
did
that's
get
really
there in
good.
the end. Yeah, so I'm hoping Paul's
Brilliant.
nice and proud.
He is, and I think there's various comments in the chat as well, talking about kind of how well you've done. So
Thank you.
yeah, once again, really well done, and appreciate you sticking with it, and well done for getting it over the line.
Thank you. Thanks, Neil.
Thank you. We'll move on to our fourth and final presentation. And I think because of operational challenges, Paul's needed to step in and present some of the work that we've been doing in REI. So over to you, Paul. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Neil. And firstly, well done, Sarah. We got there eventually. So just going to quickly talk you through some of the work that we've been doing within REI. So there's a team of sort of 4 or 5 of us over there that have been sort of having a look of how we can make their life, the way that they work, run better. Next slide, please. So what we've been looking at is kind of their list review process. We've remodeled their standard work, and as you can see from the picture on the right-hand side, so during the list review process, we look at the previous week, also having a look back at that. So what I'm now getting them to do, and what they've been doing also while I've been away as well, is looking at each session that they've got, the start time, the finishing time, what the planned utilisation was versus the actual. So if they've got an underutilised list, they can look at the reasons why, and how they can kind of improve that in the future. Big problem that REI seem to have were on-the-day cancellations, and that's something else that we've looked at, and we'll see that on the next couple of slides. What we've kind of handed over to the REI team now for them to take the ownership of is making sure that the lists are fully booked, or stroke overbooking the lists. They're now using the surgeon average operating time. So over the last 6 months, we've had a look at each surgeon and each of their procedures that they're doing, and how also that average time. So that list is now not going to be booked, for instance, for 2 hours if a surgeon's averaging an hour 20 for each one. So hopefully we can get more patients on that list and the utilisation to be up where we would like it to be as well. With REI, their unused sessions, they have had 88 unused sessions since the 1st of September, which obviously is a very big number. And this is something that Andrew Anstey and also her team are now looking into, and making sure that these unused sessions, can be full, and if not, and can be reletted properly. Also, what the REI team are looking at doing is having a sort of a complete revamp of the pre-op assessment to make sure that they've got enough patients on their lists. So if they do have either on-the-day cancellations or late cancellations, sort of like the day before, that they can be called forward then onto those operating lists. Next slide, please. So as you can see from the graph on the left-hand side, that's a snapshot of the 7 weeks before kind of we went in and actually started calling the patients. So calling the patients the day before is something that we've done with the urology team before, and it looked like a very good sort of way of getting things done within REI. So as it says, on that graph, it's down to as low as 4, and up to as high as 23 on the day cancellations, and that is just Monday to Friday. The one where it is as low as 4, on that week, they only had 44 cases, so that is 10% of their cases that week that were actually cancelled on the day. But obviously there is an inconsistency weekly of their on-the-day cancellations, and with the 2 biggest reasons being that patients are either unfit or unwell, and patients not turning up. Now, obviously, the time and cost of the rework of this obviously then takes its toll on REI as a whole. Next slide, please. So as you can see there from that slide, also where we've got the 2 lines there, for the first couple of weeks, it was the Quality Academy, so that we were then calling the patients the day before, taking that burden away from the REI admin team. But as you can see, we dropped down from 16 cancellations on the day that week down to 4 as of last week. Now, so that drop is, it's 75% of their on-the-day cancellations. So with these on-the-day cancellations, the theatre teams and the admin teams are now taking more details as to why this has happened. So they've got their own sort of data, and they can look at how they can sort of move forward from that. But it's been really good to see that the REI team have now taken the calling the patients on the day before, and it seems to be, it's definitely running in the right way, which is obviously leaving them, taking away the time then they've got to do for the rework. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick graph of the CAT utilisation of REI over the last 7 weeks. And obviously it's showing there that, by calling the patients the day before, and I'm not saying this is the only reason why the utilisation is going up, but it is helping because of having less of those on-the-day cancellations. But obviously last week, the utilisation of 86%, and that's the highest that the REI have been since early 2024. With all this, and calling off to the patients before and letting theatre staff know kind of what's going on, the team communication is so much better now, and with them all talking to each other. And next slide, please. So on to the next steps then, obviously, of what they're then going to be taking on themselves. Next slide again, please. So the REI booking staff going to continue calling the patients a day before surgery. They're really enjoying sort of using the standard work in the list review. The list review has now become a lot simpler for them as a team, and each of the staff are getting more out of that list review. During the list review now, they're more open with communicating with each other, so they're reviewing the issues, escalating what they need to, and before, if they're seeing that problem, then before it's going to happen. Fingers crossed, they'll be booking to full capacity, and also in feeding back the successes for the team, obviously, and the organisation. Next slide, please. I think that might be it.
Yes, it is, Paul. Thanks very much for the update. So some couple of really good improvements there around the reduction in the on-the-day cancellations, and also raising some of the utilisation as well. I'm just kind of interested in some of the feedback that we've had from patients when we've called them the day before. So any kind of intelligence around issues that we've avoided by being able to speak to them the day before surgery. So I was just wondering if you just give us a little bit of a flavour around that, please.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So as you know, a lot of patients that we were calling, and it could be up to sort of 35 patients a day. In general, they were very happy about receiving the phone call. It was actually a reminder for some of them that they actually had an appointment the following day. And bearing in mind they're going into surgery, it's obviously saving the on-the-day cancellations, and it's a big peace of mind for the patients as well. A couple of cancellations that we've ended up having, where we've called the patient, they've said to us that they will be attending, but then still not arriving the following day. So it's not foolproof, but yeah, in general, the positive feedback we've had is definitely helped.
Thank you, and I think that's really reflected in the figures, and I guess it's a little bit of a leap of faith for the REI team around actually just investing a little bit of time prior to surgery, which would be then seen as additional workload, but actually it's reducing their workload further down the line in terms of not needing to rebook and reschedule, and clearly so much better from a patient perspective if they're able to get in and get the procedure done on the day that they were expecting to get it done as well. So thank you, and also my thanks for just stepping in as well, just to do the slides today, because I think it was important that we're able to share with everyone the work that we've been doing within REI. So, and there's just a couple of good comments in the chat as well. So good for our patients to have less cancellations, and meaning more patients having surgery, and big impact in terms of waiting lists as well. So really well done. Thank you. Let's just move on, Bryony, just to the final slides. First of all, my thanks to everyone for presenting today, particularly those struggling through, suffering a little bit from the lurgy. We've had a nice range of improvement topics as well from across different areas. So always really good to see what's going on across the organisation. Our agenda is busy filling up for December for our special festive report out. So we've got another practice coach certification from Oliver. We're expecting a further update from REI. Some of the work that Nicola has been doing down in theatres around emission process checks, and I'm hoping to get Kaylee along, who's the ward manager from MAU, to talk about the work that I've been doing with her and her team, and with Mike from my team around 2-hour kind of check-ins and status exchange. And delighted that we've got another person through the CATA journey. So I've been doing quite a lot of work with Sarah down at Wembury at the stroke rehabilitation unit, and she's got through a whole succession of challenges there. So that's a quick plug for the December report out, which hopefully will be a full agenda and all very exciting as well. And I think, Bryony, that's pretty much it in terms of slides. I think, yeah, that's the final one. So thank you. So glad that you're just keeping me on track. So once again, appreciate your time today. I know there's a lot of conflicting commitments, particularly with the UX sprint and other commitments, but lovely to see you all. Well done, everyone, in terms of the improvement work that you're doing, and have a good month. And we will meet again in December. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks, Neil.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.